Hello, 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 or should I say, bonjour, bienvenue to tonight's Salon London, where we celebrate the Seine, the river that made Paris, with the author of the book of the same name, Elaine Sciolino, and with me, Helen Bagnall. Would you like a macaron to get in the mood? Elaine, of course, is a contributing writer and former Sparrow bureau chief for the New York Times. She's the author of 4 other books, including the New York Times bestseller, The Only Street in Paris, Life on the Rue de Marche. She was decorated as a Chevalier of the Légion d'honneur, the highest distinction of the French state, for her special contribution to the friendship between France and the US. And she has lived in Paris since 2002. For those of you who haven't met Elaine before, you're in for a treat. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Helen Bagnall. I'm the founder of Salon London that does stuff like this. Hello, Elaine.
Hello, Helen. Thank you so much for having me on tonight. It's really a pleasure coming to you from Paris under curfew at 9 o'clock.
Oh, it's great to be with you in Paris. And I know the situation for all of us outside is challenging, but tonight we're going to put all of that out of our minds as we escape to the source of the Seine together and travel into Paris along the river. I believe we have a very international crowd in the house tonight. I know we have Edel in Mozambique, friends of Elaine's from New York and Paris, and a big hello to Salon London members. I know Jill and Pascal are here, Sylvia and Peter are in the house in Whitstable, Lizzie and Richard are in the house at Park Farm. Bev is in Liverpool, hello, and Judy's not in Liverpool. Great to have you. I think we might even have a Shelley in Philadelphia, and a Susan in South Kensington. Thank you so much for everyone for coming along tonight, and especially to all of you who have braved the front row. Well done, and thank you. And a massive merci to the producer, Dickon Towns, and to photographer and creative director, Christian Banfield, who lit me tonight. I want to travel always with a lighting crew. Because it's Paris, we had to have beautiful light, right? So, Etelos, ce soir is going to work a little bit like this. Elaine is going to steer us down the Seine for the first half of the salon, taking her with us on a tour of the river. I'll then be asking Elaine a few questions. I'll definitely be asking her about bouquinistes who sell the book along the Seine. And I might even ask Elaine what she thought of Emily in Paris. Before we'll open up to your questions, perhaps you'd like to find out more about the bridges of Paris, or those who live on the river barges, the rowing clubs, or those who fish in the Seine. It's up to you. You can put your questions in the Zerucci field anytime, or if you're in the front row, let me know. And the magic of Dickon can mean you can put your question to her herself. So all it remains to do is say, take it away, Elaine.
Well, thank you so much, Helen, for having me here this evening. And this is the second time I've been on the most extraordinary adventure with you in Salon London. I was your guest about a decade ago with my book, La Seduction. And I like to say that Helen is the most seductive hostess in the literary world, and she makes me feel young and cool, which is why I always like to be with you, Helen. Let me take you on my adventure of the Seine. And many of you are in London, and you think you know this river, but I'm going to tell you that you really don't know this river very well, because look at this map. Can you all see the map of the river, I hope? Yes, Helen, we're up with the slideshow, I hope?
Yeah.
Yep, great. Thank you, Dickon, in the background, our fabulous tech guy. People like me are technologically challenged, so it's always good to have a great team. Look at this river. You think you know the Seine? Well, this is the Seine. It's not that 8 miles that you see in Paris, that soft little gentle curve. It's really a curlicue of a river that is almost 500 miles long. If it were straight, it would be half the length. And just to put us in the mood for what you're about to hear, I just thought I would read from the beginning of the book to just take us away from all of our problems with COVID, or those of you who are in America holding your breath to see what's going to happen in the American election, and just let's have some fun. The Seine encourages us to dream, to linger, to flirt, to fall in love, or to at least fantasize that falling in love is possible. The light bouncing off her banks and bridges at night can carry even the least imaginative of us into flights of fancy. No other river comes close. The Ganges, the Mississippi, and the Yangtze, They are muscular workhorses. The Danube, it may be immortalized as the world's most recognizable waltz, but its history is one of warring nations. The Thames, excuse me, Londoners, but who can name one famous couple who fell in love on its banks? Okay, this is the source of the Seine. Now, this is quite far away from Paris. In deepest Burgundy, it's the part of Burgundy where there are more cows than people, not the fancy part of Burgundy that has the wonderful wines. And if you look at this sign, it's very strange because it says Ville de Paris. And that's because the source of the Seine belongs to the city of Paris. It's kind of like the 21st arrondissement. And it happened because Napoleon III, when he was emperor, decided he wanted to project the power of Paris to the source of the Seine and declare the Seine France's river. So he sent Baron Haussmann, the city planner who either destroyed Paris or transformed it. It made it beautiful in the 19th century. He sent him to the source of the Seine and said, just make it Paris. So this is why we are in Paris now. And this, those of you who know Paris, all the rivers, the bridges of Paris, the beautiful 35 bridges across the banks from the 8 miles of Paris River. This is really the first bridge in Paris over the Seine. And you can see how the Seine is just this tiny little creek. It's not even a river because all it is like little springs that bubble up from the surface and are channeled artificially to make a river. Now, what do we have here? 2,000 years ago, the source of the Seine was a Gallo-Roman healing temple with a healing goddess who was named Sequana. And it was almost like a little village where people came from as far as the Mediterranean and what is now the English Channel. Oh, are we getting an echo or are we okay? We okay? I hope. As far as the English Channel to pray to the goddess Sequana to be cured. And they would come for days at a time, the pilgrims, and deposit devotional offerings or ex votos into that little pool that looks like a swimming pool and hope that Sequana would cure them. And here is a statue of our goddess Sequana. I fell in love with this statue. It sits in the archaeological museum in Dijon. And if those of you who know Dijon and think it's just you know it for the mustard, you really should treat yourself to go to the archaeological museum and see this absolutely fabulous statue. I fell so in love with her that I decided that maybe a replica should be built of her the same size as the mini Statue of Liberty that sits on an island in the Seine, just outside of Paris. I even put in a formal application in a contest called Reinvent the Seine to have a replica of her built either in Paris or Rouen or the three main cities on the Seine. And you're gonna have to read the book to see if I won or lost. Now, my daughter Gabriella, whose lovely face I saw in the audience, who's in the United States, took this fabulous photograph when we went to the museum. And here is Sequana, here's her face. I mean, isn't she gorgeous? I mean, I think she's just terrific. So this is what I wrote about the statue and why we should revere her. What I wrote in my application was the following: a pre-Christian healing goddess with no ties to any living religion, Sequana would fit into the official French policy that reveres the Republican ideal. She could be the secular version of Joan of Arc and of Our Lady of Lourdes, the miracle worker. She could be the idealized embodiment of freedom without the Republican weight of Machian leading citizens to liberty. As Sequana was a healing goddess, we could create an NGO to help women in need of spiritual or physical healing. Now, the other thing is Sequana was also a feminist healing goddess. So she kind of was like the Gallo-Roman heroine of the Me Too movement, because there's a legend that at one point Neptune, the god of the sea, came rushing out of the sea to capture Sequana and take her off to the sea, into the sea with him. And what did she do to save herself? When Neptune reached out his arms to seize her, her body melted into water. Her veil and green garments, which the winds blew before her, became emerald-colored waves. She was transformed into a river of that color, which still delights in wandering the places she loved as a nymph. Sequana became the Seine River. And there's the Statue of Liberty, and I think she looks awfully lonely out there on that island, don't you? Wouldn't it be great if she could have Sequana like standing right next to her? They could talk to her all day. Now, here is the Seine when it's just starting up on its journey to the sea. I mean, look at it. It's just, you know, it doesn't, it's not even a creek. It's just kind of like a little rivulet there. This is at the city of Châtillon, not very far from the source of the Seine. And here we've got the Seine in Champagne country. Now, many of you who are joining us from London and from the United States might know fancy Champagne country, like maybe you've gone to Reims or to Épernay, where there are all those incredibly well-dressed Frenchmen will come and greet you at the door with their hunting dogs and their tweeds, and you know, you sometimes have to make reservations months in advance. Well, there's a whole other part of the Champagne country in the Aube, which is to the south, and the Champagne is a little more earthy and minerally, and it's really kind of undiscovered by an awful lot of us. And one of the Champagne domains actually sits on the Seine River. And this is one of the heroes of Champagne in the Aube, of Monsieur Fleury. He's a fourth generation Champagne maker, grape grower, and he uses all those fancy biodynamic techniques, and you know, cuts the grapes when the moon is at the right place in the sky. He also owns with his wife something called a gîte, which is kind of like a very homey small hotel with one kitchen and one bathroom for 25 people, but it's really, really terrific. And it sits on the Seine River. And if you can believe it, I went swimming in the Seine there. So if you really want to take a swim in the Seine, I've got the place you can go. And there's no people around, so if you wanted to, you could go skinny dipping and nobody will bother you. I mean, Helen, when we started out, said I should try to like make this talk a little sexy, even though it's about a river. So Helen, I'm trying to spice it up a little bit for your benefit. This is the Seine very close to Paris. And this is also another photograph that my daughter Gabriella took. And I love this photograph because it shows just how calm and still the river is. It's almost like glass or like a mirror, which underscores just how slow moving it is. And you could see here a feel for why painters like Turner or Monet were just enraptured by the Seine. And now we're in Paris. And what do we have here? This is the seal of the city of Paris. What's the seal? It's a boat on the Seine. And we have here the motto of the city of Paris, which is Fluctuat nec mergitur, which, and I don't know, do we have the means to have anybody be able to ask any questions during this talk, or are we going to wait until the end? Helen?
I think we're going to wait. I think we're going to wait till the end, Elaine.
Okay. So, well, Fluctuat nec mergitur, then I'll have to say, we can't do a contest then, because I will have to tell the secret of what it means. It means tossed by the waves, but does not sink. And this is the motto of the city of Paris. And it was also the motto that was used after the horrible terrorist attacks in November of 2015, when the Bataclan concert hall and a sports stadium and some bars, restaurants on a Friday night were attacked. the city of Paris decided to light up the Eiffel Tower with the extraordinary motto, Fluctuatnik Mergitur, and the seal of the city of Paris. The next time you all come to Paris, if we ever open up our borders and everybody can come back to Paris, look around and you're going to see this motto and the seal everywhere. The seal is on the sides of bridges, it's in metro stations, it's in on the side of park benches. I even have here, and I'm just going to do this because when we did my seduction talk 10 years ago, I talked a little bit how Parisians were into striptease and how you could actually take striptease lessons. I actually went to a striptease lesson, so I'm going to rip off my scarf in a very elegant way, not too daring, and show you the seal of the city of Paris that is on my Hermes scarf. And if you play your cards right, I'll tell you where you can buy this kind of a scarf, Hermes scarves, really cheap in Paris. Okay, the bouquinistes, the booksellers along the Seine. There are still about 240 of them. I have to tell you that confinement has been dreadful because there are very few tourists in Paris. And who buys books at a little shop on the side of the Seine? It's people who are so filled with the romance and the aura of the Seine that they decide that they will never buy on Amazon again. And this is Jackie Gallois. This is another photograph that was taken by my daughter, Gabriella. And what I love about him is that he only sells books. He doesn't sell keychains and magnets and second-rate reproductions. Now, let's see what are some of the things you can do along the Seine. I'm going to read a little passage about how life is lived on the river. You can live, eat, and drink, make love, get married, practice yoga, run a business, shop for books, watch fireworks, do a wine tasting, go fishing, dance the tango on the Seine. You can attend a fashion show, a concert, a play. You can find a hotel, a psychiatric hospital ward, a film studio, a homeless shelter, an architect's showroom, all floating on the river. So here we have people sunbathing. Now we have people salsa dancing, and you can even get free salsa dancing lessons on the Seine. Fishing, you can get a one-day permit and go fishing in the Seine. And yes, there are fish in the Seine. Boating, this is the Sequana Association. They repair 100-year-old boats, and you can go out and visit them, and you can even go and take a ride in the boat that was once owned by the painter Caillebotte or the writer Maupassant. Swimming. Now, does this prove that you actually can swim in the Seine? This photograph was taken by one of my students when I was teaching at Princeton. It was when Anne Hidalgo, the mayor of Paris, decided that Paris should get the Summer Olympics in 2024. So she constructed a 12-meter diving board on the Alexandre III Bridge and sent the Olympic diving team into the Seine. And when this kid came out, I said to him, "So what was it like down there?" And he said, "Well, you know what, if it was pretty dark and I thought I was going to hit the bottom, but I think with a good 20-minute shower, I might live." And romance, right? You think about the Seine, you think about romance. Dancing along the banks of the Seine, you know. American in Paris, funny face. And what was this movie? La La Land. I mean, La La Land, the whole movie is in California, and then suddenly Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone are dancing along the Seine, the ultimate fantasy to have a wonderful night of romance on the Seine. Well, one of my friends said to me, "Elaine, you can't write a book about the Seine if you think you want to sell it and not have a chapter about sex." And I said, "Well, Barbara, the Seine River, it's not about sex. I mean, where are you going to have sex? Under the bridges, you know, it's dirty, it's damp. You know, Paris has 2 million inhabitants that are human and 4 million inhabitants that are ratatouilles, you know, people are not going to have fun having sex. But I used to cover the CIA, so I'm a good investigative reporter, and I found sex on the Seine. One year when Paris was doing its Nuit Blanche celebration, which means that Paris stays open all night for a celebration of cultural events, a Chinese fireworks artist did the ultimate Paris sex fantasy and called it One Night Stand. And I'd like to just read you a tiny bit about the One Night Stand. One Night Stand opened at midnight with the sounds of sex. There was heavy breathing, gasping, and moaning broadcast across the river by loudspeaker. Rhythmic drumming and a monkey's mating call added auditory texture. Next, a pyrotechnic display sent fireworks into the air. The act lasted 12 minutes, estimated to be the length of time the average French couple needs to climax. Then, the artist transformed Bateau Mouche into a love boat where 50 couples from around the world had sex inside translucent red tents. The couples were given the option of either turning off the lights in their tents to copulate privately or turning them on to reveal their silhouettes in motion. To share the bliss with the crowd, the lovers could press a button signaling operators in small boats nearby to send a 15-second spurt of bright white fireworks into the air. And there it is, One Night Stand. Okay, all right, I know, we're having too much fun. Let's get serious. Now, I want all of you to think hard because during the question and answer period, if you know the answer to who painted this painting or what the name of it is, you get a prize. What the prize is a frame-ready illustrated map of the Seine. Okay, so this is our first scene. Everybody thinking about it? 1880, 1881.
Someone guessed in the comments.
Oh, someone guessed in the comments? Oh my gosh. Okay, well, we have a winner then. This is great. If someone guessed in the comments, that's great. So I can reveal what it is, which is Renoir's. Oh, we don't have a winner yet?
Correct.
Oh,
no, not a winner, not a correct guess, but someone guessed in the comments. That's where they were guessing.
Oh my gosh. Well, the tension mounts. This is great. We've got a little bit of a little bit of excitement and drama in this presentation. Next one. Who knows the painter here looking out from his studio to the Quai Saint-Michel out into the Seine? Okay, everybody see that one? Now, this one's going to be a really harder one. This is a 1937 painting of a very famous bridge. And that's a big institution in the back that some of you may or may not recognize. So think about it. And nobody can cheat. You can't be looking it up on the internet. Anybody, that would be cheating. We don't want any cheating here tonight. This is the salon is an institution of integrity. I have to tell you, we don't have fake news and we don't cheat. Okay, now this is the last one. Now this is the killer one. Who knows who painted this in 1951? Isn't that the coolest painting of the Seine? The painter was inspired by the play of light on the Seine. Okay, we're going to leave Paris now. We're going to go west towards the sea, and I love this. We're in Rouen now. We're in the city of Joan of Arc, but it wasn't just Joan. Joan of Arc isn't the only famous person that came to Rouen. So did Verrazano, the explorer who, depending on if you believe it, discovered New York, or New York Harbor, or at least part of New York. It took him 50 days in 1524 to reach New York from Rouen, sent by King Francis I. And he started out with 4 boats, and one of them made it. Going farther west, this is a 13th century windmill in Normandy, hidden in the middle of nowhere. I came across this windmill, which had been part of an abbey, and I wanted to go in. It was open, but there were all of these birds flying around everywhere. Birds. And I'm an old war correspondent, but still, birds were not what I can deal with shelling, but I couldn't deal with birds. So I said to the guy, the caretaker, "Did you ever see the birds?" And he said, and I said, "Les oiseaux?" And he said, and I said, "Alfred Hitchcock?" And he said, "Oh, yeah. He said, "Well, if you want to go upstairs and take a look around and you don't come down in 20 minutes, I'll come looking for you." He didn't have to rescue me. And now we're at the end of the Seine. Remember I showed you that picture of the first bridge on the Seine? This is the last bridge on the Seine. This is where the Seine transforms itself into a huge estuary that opens out to the sea. I'm going to take you back to Paris now, to one of the most extraordinary photographs of the Seine, taken by a great photographer, Gary Zucker. I don't know if Gary's with us tonight. He said he might be, and I hope he is. Gary was a lifelong lover of photography and a businessman, and in retirement, he decided to photograph all of the bridges of the Seine at night, and it took him 5 years, and he turned it into a glorious book called The Glow of Paris. This is one of my favorite views of Paris at night. Sometimes when I can't sleep, I get up really early in the morning and I watch the sun come up on the back of Notre Dame. A very different view from the front, and over that thing that looks like a missile. That's a statue of Saint Genevieve, Saint Genevieve. And I want to end my talk with my formal talk with talking just a bit about Notre Dame, because my book was already printed. It had already been sent out to reviewers and to fact checkers when fire consumed Notre Dame on April 15th of 2019. And I realized that there was a fireboat on the river that seemed to be doing something with helping putting out the fire at Notre Dame. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to write another chapter, because the Seine played a role in helping stop the fire. It turns out that the water supply and the water pressure on the Ile de la Cité, where Notre Dame sits, were too weak to handle the fire. There wasn't enough water and enough pressure. And so what the firefighters had to do was to go all the way to the Marne River and to call one of their fireboats, a tank of a boat, an old boat, and to send it through those curves that we saw early in my first slide, through a lock, until it could arrive right in front of Notre Dame. And this is what happened. The Ile de France, it was called, was a powerful floating station. It was hooked up to the hoses, and it started pumping water from the Seine into the hoses to put out the fire. And I'm going to end my presentation with just reading you the end of the book. The powerful motors of the Ile de France furiously pumped water from the depths of the river. By the time the fire was extinguished hours later, the city's firefighting force estimated that half the water used in the operation had come from the Seine. General Jean-Claude Gallet, the commander of the firefighters, said, "We had before us two elements of nature, fire and water. The fire had the face of a demon with a mind of its own. Then, right in front of us, we had the Seine. It was as if the Seine were human. It all sounds a bit mystical, but the water of the Seine saved Notre Dame. His spokesman called it a miracle. I grew up Catholic, and I would never claim to contradict those who believe that God answered their prayers in saving Notre Dame. But I have also come to believe in the spiritual as well as the physical power of the Seine. Even before the ancient Romans conquered Gaul, its source had been the site of a temple of healing and a place of pilgrimage dedicated to the goddess Sequana. Notre Dame will be rebuilt, different perhaps, but with its primal place in French life and its symbolic meaning for the world intact. It will be reborn as a vibrant place of music, ritual, and prayer for believers, and a beautiful museum for the masses. The holy waters of the river that once bore the name Sequana saved the greatest cathedral in the world. I want to believe that the spirit of the goddess herself lives on. And here's the boat that saved the Seine. And that's it.
Much, Elaine. Thank you so much.
Well,
thank you for the journey of the Seine from the first bridge to the last bridge, and it's really, really moving to hear about the role the Seine played in saving Notre Dame. Before we go a bit deeper into some of the areas you've covered, let's do the art, because everyone wants to know. So the first one, I believe was, well, I know Kathy got it right. It was Renoir. That's right? The painting number one, Elaine?
Yes, Renoir, absolutely. Yes.
It was, when was it? Luncheon. It's the luncheon of the boating party, right?
You got it.
And it was Kathy Bonk. Congratulations,
oh, my
Kathy.
friend Kathy Bonk is on. Yay, thank you. Thank you for coming.
A macaron for you. Okay, painting number two. Any last guesses? Painting number two was, can you remind us of painting number two, Elaine?
I beg your pardon? Painting number two was the painting with the nude looking out the window.
Right, painting with the nude. I don't think anyone's got it. We've got a Matisse.
Matisse? Who got Matisse?
Susan Schwartz got Matisse. Is that right?
Susan, you got it right. It's Matisse.
Oh my goodness, Susan, a macaron for you. That Princeton education's done you proud. We have number three. Any last guesses for number three? Let me check the other system. Come on, Jill. I know you know who it could be. Nothing for number three, I don't think. Elaine, we've got one guess, which is Bonnard.
No, not Bonnard. All right, let's make it. Does anybody know what the bridge was? Did anybody remember what that bridge was?
Does anyone know what the bridge is in painting number three?
I'll make it easy. What's the oldest bridge in Paris?
We've got a Pont Neuf come through.
Pont Neuf, okay. Whoever said Pont Neuf got it. That's it. That's good enough for me.
Okay, it's Susan Schwartz again. She's got two.
You can't win twice. Come on. All right, you got a Christmas cup present for somebody. You got to. Okay, good.
Okay, and number four.
She studied art history well. Okay,
she did. She's Princeton in the house, she's saying, showing off that education there. Well done, Suze. So the fourth one was the modern piece of the Seine, the black and white, the monochromatic. Anyone for number four? Come, there's some very clever people in the house, from New York to California to DC.
Yeah, and I see both my daughters are here. I see Gabriella and Alessandra. Hey, Alessandra, thanks for tuning in. Hi.
Hello, Gabriella. Hello, Alexandra. You must know who number four is. Another couple of seconds more. Let me check the other stream to see if Jill. No. Well, should we leave that one for the end, just to see if anyone?
Okay, I'll give another hint. It was an American, and he came to Paris on the GI Bill, and was inspired by the Seine. That's the best I could. That's the best I'll do. Okay.
Hefty clue for a beautiful picture of the Seine from Elaine. So it was an American. He came to Paris on the GI Bill. I think that's right. Okay, right. While people are having a think about that, let's go a little bit deeper into some of the things you covered. One of the things I it is an absolutely beautiful river. I think it could take the Thames in a fight, so I think you're right there. And it's also sort of beautiful to hear about its pagan roots and the Romans being there and the people of Gaul being there. I wanted to ask you about the swimming. I want to go a little bit deeper into the Seine and the water. And I know in the book you talk about the Jean Nouvel all-white Lido. I think it's called La Bande de Docks, where the most beautiful kind of Lido. So if you like Lido, it's definitely worth looking up. And I love that picture of the diver backflipping into the water. But you mention in the book a bit about the history of swimming in the Seine in Paris. And I wondered if you could tell us a little bit more about the history of swimming in the river.
Well, swimming, people have been swimming in the Seine since prehistoric times. I mean, the boats were found when they were digging a parking lot. They found boats from 6,000 years ago. So we know that people were boating and swimming in the Seine, and swimming was a way that people bathed. What happened though is that the Seine got quite polluted and so dirty that a few decades ago there were only 4 species of fish in the Seine. It was not the kind of place where you wanted to go swimming. Certainly not near Paris, but close to the source. You can swim. You could always swim, and you can swim now. And when I was at the source of the Seine, what I didn't mention is that I actually drank the water of the Seine too at the source, because at the source it's just water bubbling up as a spring. So I would, I think that Anne Hidalgo may actually, if she works hard enough, she may actually be able to clean the Seine up enough to so that we can all go swimming in 2024.
It does sound like something people want to do. There's a huge movement for swimming in the Thames. I swam in the Thames this summer, and there's just something so incredible about swimming in major rivers. And I was going to ask you, do you think that's going to be something in the future of Paris? So great to be here. It might be something that we're able to do in 2024.
You can swim. It's just a question of, every day the Brigade Fluviale, the river police, have to do exercises, and they have to put on their wetsuits and go swimming in the Seine every single day. So they're swimming in Paris in the Seine. Now, they have to take lots and lots of injections against all sorts of viruses and diseases, and bacteria, but they do swim.
Yeah, I got really ill after swimming in the Thames, but that's a different story. We're in the magic of Paris tonight. But can you tell us a little bit about life, life on the river when a little bit about Ganget life, when there was kind of like a freer, more enjoyable way of enjoying the Seine. What was that like?
Well, there still is. It was pretty dreadful during really tough confinement last March, where it was so strict that we in Paris were only allowed to go out of our homes for 1 hour and only within 1 kilometer radius of our residences. But even now, with the restrictions in the 9 p.m. curfew, the banks of the Seine are a place of recreation. What the mayor did was she closed the lower banks of the Seine to car traffic, and now you have bicyclists and joggers and pedestrians and dog walkers who have taken over the lower banks of the Seine. So you can practically reach out and touch the water from where you stand. That has led to all sorts of pleasure boats, boats being transformed into restaurants and clubs and bars along the Seine, and also outdoor cafes, and so the Seine itself has become a destination for everyday recreation in Paris.
So you think that spirit that Renoir was trying to capture with Luncheon at the Boating Party is still possible to get in Paris on the banks of the Seine?
Well, absolutely. That spirit of Renoir, you mentioned the spirit of Renoir, that the place where that painting was painted, the Maison Fournaise, is still a restaurant today, and you can go there and you can sit at the exact same spot where Renoir painted that painting and look out over the Seine. Now, it was a different kind of place then. It was kind of like a place where you escaped city life, and a place for encounters of all types, both gastronomic and sexual. But and now it's just gastronomic.
And you recommend that as something to do when we can go back to Paris?
Well, the ambiance is better than the food, but to go there once, it's worth it. Yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit more about some of the painters who painted the Seine? You know, why was it such a good subject for them, and where did they go to paint?
It was a subject for particularly Impressionists because of the light, because the light changes on the Seine 20 times a day, especially when you move to Normandy, where the weather turns. You can wake up in the morning in Normandy and have the sun out, and then in an hour it's gray, and then the sun comes back out. And so the Impressionists actually put their studio. Someone like Monet put his studio on a boat and went out to the Seine every single morning before dawn so that he could capture the movement of the river. And it was that sense of light that you just don't see on so many other rivers.
It's, Paris, the Paris is such a beautiful city anyway at night. It really, really does sparkle, particularly the river. And why is that? Why does it look so beautiful? The Thames is just not like that. The other rivers are just not like that. Why is...
the Seine is a very narrow river, and the bridges in Paris are very low to the water, and that creates an intimacy. So that if you're standing on one of those bridges, you feel one with the water, and the density of there are so many bridges in such a small area that it you feel like you own the river when you're standing on one of the bridges. And the banks of the Seine are lined with what I call monumental Paris, some of the most beautiful buildings in the world, so that it just, I write early in my book about how when I first came to Paris the first time, when I was still in my 20s, and I came with, no friends, no contacts, no lovers, no sources. I walked home every day over the Seine, and I'd stand in the middle of the bridge and just look out and watch the sun set behind the Eiffel Tower, and I couldn't be sad. And I still feel that way. I mean, it kind of sounds really corny, or like a cliche, but sometimes the cliches are true.
Do you have any favorite representations of Paris in film, or other pictures that you didn't show, that you didn't know before you started the book?
Favorite representations of the Seine in film?
In Paris, in film. We can't really do music, but in film.
I don't think I can't imagine anybody not wanting to be Leslie Caron being, dancing with Gene Kelly along the banks of the Seine. I mean, who doesn't want to dance with some brilliant, wonderful person who's going to make you feel like you are the best dancer in the world while, romantic music is playing in the background. I mean, there have been hundreds of movies made on the Seine. I mean, one of the pictures I have in my book is one of Audrey Hepburn looking radiant on the Seine. I mean, anybody who's ever seen the movie Charade with Cary Grant, who doesn't want to be on a bateau mouche, one of those tourist boats, sitting across from the person that you love, having a wonderful dinner over with candlelight. I mean, let's bring Salon to Paris and take us all on the bateau mouche with lots of champagne and a nice dinner. Who's all for that in the audience? Yes. Yeah, I
Yeah.
see a lot of thumbs up. I see a lot of thumbs up here. Yes.
The thought of it is just so gorgeous. Almost can't think about it. I've got to ask about Emily in Paris. I know you've written about it. What did you think of the representation? It's been such a hit, and it's just perfect for this time because, you know, it is like you're almost there and you can kind of get some sense of being in the city. But what do you think about as a news reporter from America in Paris?
Well, here I've covered everything from French presidential elections to terrorism to Iran's nuclear program, and I was recently assigned a story for the style section of the New York Times on the French reaction to Emily in Paris. But the challenge was I had to get the French reaction before the series was aired. So how do you do that? Well, you sweet talk Netflix to give you an advanced copy of the whole thing. But then with confinement, I couldn't just invite a dozen people into my living room to watch it. So I had to show it, parts of it, over and over to different groups of people, and I got people from age 22 to 80 to look at this, and every French person who looked at it said ridicule, ridiculous, but they all laughed. And to me, anything that makes us laugh these days is worth it. It's filled with cliches, but as I said earlier in another context, sometimes the cliches are true. And I first moved to Paris when I was in my 20s, and I moved to Paris from Chicago, where Emily comes. She comes from Chicago to Paris. Of course, I didn't have her wardrobe. I came with Ugg boots and a sheepskin coat, which didn't serve me well in Paris, but they did very well when I had to cover the Iranian Revolution. But I recommend Emily in Paris. It's a cliche. It's not real Paris. There are no people of color. There are no metro. Nobody takes a metro. There's no dirt, there's no rats, but it will sweep you off your feet and make you feel that there are dreams and there are fantasies, and it'll make you feel good.
Well said, and nice to have something that we can all experience as well, and like some of the art that we've been showing, and books. Talking about books, I wanted to ask about the Buccaneers. You mentioned them again in your talk, and I really love that part in the book. So you start your question with a great quote from the British journalist Kirsty Lang, and that's the Seine is the only river in the world that runs between two bookshelves, which I loved as a bookseller. And I'm sure most of us have been to Paris will have seen their green pop-up stores along the fringe of the Seine. And I hadn't realised that they'd been there for hundreds of years. And I wondered if you could just give us a quick potted history of the Bouquinistes.
Yes, the Bouquinistes have been in this place along the river for about 400 years. And at various times they were banned for political reasons because they sold prohibited tracts, political tracts. But they really are the gatekeepers of Paris and the keepers of literary Paris in a unique way. I mean, they've been copied in many other cities that have rivers and have put booksellers along the rivers. They have a society that's trying to keep the booksellers alive. There's about 250 of them left. I think altogether they have something like 300,000 books. And to stay alive, many of them have had to turn to selling all sorts of trinkets. Remember when they were the love locks, when everybody was putting the locks on the bridges of Paris before the bridges started falling down? Well, you could buy love locks there, so you can preserve your love with a combination lock or a lock with a key. But I love them because you don't have to know anything. You don't have to know French. You don't have to go into a shop. You can just be anybody, and you can, just browse and touch these books and feel like you belong. And for me, that's what's so nice about coming to Paris, even as an outsider, is that you can be just walking along the banks of the Seine and stop at one of these bouquinistes, and you can feel, smart and intellectual and look at wonderful old books and feel like, oh, this is nice.
Oh, I love anything about buying books in different ways. Is just so romantic and so positive, and always great to support booksellers. I noticed, though, you say not intellectual. You bought a copy of Louis Sébastien Mercier's Tableau de Paris. That sounds pretty intellectual to me. Having said that, Elaine, one of the great pleasures about reading your book, I've actually got it here, is that I was able to look up all of the art and the advertisements and understand the books that you mentioned and the music you mentioned as you go along, and it was almost like an immersive read. I mean, someone's just put in the chat, I really miss Paris, having talking about this and hearing you talk about it, you know, but there is a really nice way of seeing things so differently when you have so many artistic, you know, mentions in the book. It's a great immersive read. So thank you. I've just got one more question I want to ask before I go to questions. If anyone wants to ask a question, please put it in chat, or if you're on the front row, you can ask Elaine directly if you'd like to. Carla, I can see you've asked a question. If you want to ask it yourself and you're on row, let me know in the questions and I'll sort that out. But my final question is about reinventing the Seine, and we've talked a little bit about this, but it seemed that every mayor has an idea of what they want Paris to be, and that their ideas seem to reflect the ideas of the time, and it just didn't really feel right to read about Georges Pompidou saying Paris must adapt to the car, you know, when we look at it now from our sort of environmental vantage point. So I wondered if you could give us some great news, you know, when we do come back to Paris, what can we kind of look forward to which way is Paris going? How is that Seine side going to reinvent itself?
Well, that's a great question, and it's a great way to sort of bring this part of our conversation to closure. The Seine has never been like the Loire. You know, many of you may have ridden your bikes all along the length of the Loire. The Loire doesn't have very many cities on it, and so much of it has stayed green and accessible, where the Seine has been built up with industry, a lot of private homes and enterprises. And now the Seine has launched a project, Seine à vélo, the Seine on a bicycle, so that you can ride your bike from Paris, all the way to the sea, all the way to Le Havre, along the Seine.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear that.
And this is magic. It's you know, it's just going to be 200 miles of magic.
Oh, well, that's good to hear. Okay, I was going to say that was a question from Leslie. Hello, Leslie, and she said, "Is there a footpath along the bank of the Seine, as there is along the Thames?" So, question answered. Thank you so much, Elaine. And actually, Dickon and I, the producer here, have cycled that trip to Paris very badly without GPS, and we completely missed the path. So, hopefully, next time we'll be able to do it a little bit better. So, we've got a question from Judy. Hello, Judy. How are you? I know you've been reading the book, and I know that you've been watching Emily in Paris to get in the mood for tonight. I don't know what you're drinking or what you're eating, though. And her question is, hello, Elaine. As an American in Paris, which of the following two views is the fairer? She says, is it right to say sometimes Parisians need the view of naive outsiders to appreciate what is theirs? Or is Paris so overhyped it's amazing more visitors don't succumb to Paris syndrome? Maybe you could talk a bit about what Paris syndrome is.
Oh, from what I understand, Paris syndrome is when you become so overwhelmed by the exquisite beauty of Paris that you become overcome in some way and you become ill. You cannot bear it anymore because the beauty of the city is so extraordinary. I think it started among Japanese tourists who just felt that Paris was like a drug that made you so high that you could faint or you had to take to your bed. I think those tourists should go to other neighborhoods in Paris and discover real Paris, as well as monumental, beautiful museum Paris, you know, and if they would come to me, I would take them into you know, into my neighborhood of Paris, for example, in the 9th arrondissement, where it's a much more what we call working class or populaire neighborhood, although now it's gotten very gentrified, but where we can go into all of the food stores and talk to food merchants and even move into parts of Paris where they still have you know, sex shops and massage parlors and you know, and then up to Montmartre and Sacré-Cœur. So there's many Parises, and I think it's kind of hard to generalize about Paris. The way there is, it's hard to generalize about, you know, the perfect Parisienne, or who's the ideal elegant woman of Paris.
All things can be true. I like that. Okay, I've got a question from Carla, and she says, did you run into any dogs along the Seine?
Dogs? There's dogs everywhere. You better love dogs if you come to Paris, yes. And all of the cliches about dog poop on the streets is still true. Yes, there are still people who don't clean up after their dogs. There are a lot fewer dogs in restaurants. It used to be when I moved to Paris here the first time when I was in my late 20s. Lots of people brought dogs into restaurants. People don't bring dogs into restaurants anymore. Oh, but one thing, one of the exceptions for the curfew, the 9 p.m. curfew, is dog walking. So if you have a dog, you can be out at night at 11 o'clock or midnight.
Got a really lovely comment from Stephanie, who says she was so lucky to live on the Ile de Louis in Paris for a year, aged 18. Oh, how amazing. In a residence run by Polish nuns studying in the Sorbonne. She said it was like a dream, and that Paris has been stitched into her soul since then. I think that's true for a lot of people who have a young experience in Paris, or any experience in Paris. And she then goes on to talk about Paris. Is it real, though? But the question I kind of want to end on before we go to the artwork is from Sarah, and she says, Elaine, where is your favourite spot on the river?
My favorite spot in the river is that spot on the Pont de la Tournelle. And I see Gary Zucker, who took that photograph, is with us tonight.
Hello, Gary.
Where I would stand before the sun came up and watch the sun come up on the back of Notre Dame. And if it's a sunny day, it will turn the back of Notre Dame this golden orangey hue, and you just think all is right with the world. And then, of course, since it's really early morning and you've been out there and finally the sun comes up and you say, why am I out here at dawn instead of sleeping? There's a wonderful cafe on a few blocks away that will make you the perfect omelet and the perfect café crème. And to me, that's perfection along the Seine.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you, Sarah. Brilliant question. Actually, we've got time for one more before we do the fourth piece of art. And that's from Adele. Hello, Adele. I think you're in Mozambique. Hello. And she says, Elaine, what are the biggest changes in Paris since you first moved there? She lived in the 11th for 3 years.
Well, we've lived here. My husband and I have lived here, and my daughters lived here for several years with us when they were students. My husband and I have lived here together for 18 years. And one of the biggest changes is that real estate prices have skyrocketed, so that it's really hard for normal people to buy apartments in Paris, and rents have skyrocketed too. And that has pushed people out into the suburbs. The other thing that has changed is that I think the social cleavages have gotten deeper and harsher, and we're seeing it now in the aftermath of this, this terrible terrorist act of a beheading, where there is real fear of the other that we see in the United States as well, and there are attempts by the French government to try to pull the country together, but it's a real challenge, and it's made harder by confinement. And I don't want to end on a negative note, but it's going to take real political will and a real coming together of civil society to resolve some of the very deep social issues that affect Paris, but also France. And again, this is why we need to also embrace moments of beauty and encounters of beauty, like tonight with us together, to just celebrate a place like the Seine where you can find peace and tranquility and the sun setting behind the Eiffel Tower and think, okay, it's a good day.
Oh, thank you, Elaine. And yeah, it's been beautiful to have an hour together to really think about the course of the Seine, from where it rises and where it ends, and to spend some time in Paris. But you are a journalist, and there's always going to be that real life coming into it, as it does. There's such a beauty of real life, such a balance of beauty and real life in your book, and you do that incredibly well with your heritage of being a journalist in the New York Times and also living in Paris for nearly 2 decades. So congratulations on your book. Thank you for transporting us along the Seine. It has been such a brilliantly international gang of us tonight in Paris. Thank you so much, everyone who's come in from everyone who's come in from America and from Africa, and I don't have a microphone anymore. But are you telling me that we can end on the luncheon? The picture, okay. So thank you so much for being part of this, and if you would like to be part of more salons, then please do think about being a member. It would be lovely to have you. And I'd just like to say thank you so much to Elaine for tonight. Dickens just reminded me, can we do the 4th picture before we end? Elaine, who is the artist in the 4th picture?
The artist in the 4th picture is Ellsworth Kelly. And I want to thank everybody too. I mean, Helen, I really want to thank you and Dickon for doing this. I mean, your organization is absolutely fabulous, and you are a force of nature, and you've kept it going all during confinement. I mean, you built it yourself from scratch, and everybody should support Salon, because it's not only a great intellectual organization and a place where you can think great thoughts, but it's a lot of fun to be with Helen and her team, and hopefully when the world opens up again, we can do face-to-face events again with lots of champagne and music and balloons. I also want to just thank both my daughters for being here tonight. I haven't seen you since last February. I'll see you soon, but it really gives me great strength to see the two of you along with me on this journey today. And thank you to my friends too, who showed up from all over America.
Oh, Elaine, thank you for saying that. It means a lot. Did you say who the 4th artist was? The 4th.
Yes, it was Ellsworth Kelly.
Someone said Ellsworth Kelly. Someone said,
well,
who
then that
was
person
it?
That person gets a prize. You will get a frame ready. Anybody who buys the book, by the way, you get a frame ready.
That's right. Anyone who wants to buy the book
and a signed stick-on book plate.
That's right. Anyone who wants to buy the book.
And Helen doesn't know it yet, but I'm sending her some copies of the British edition of my seduction book so that she can give this to people, some of her favorite people. So if any of you have a good relationship with Helen, she will send this to you. This was the British book publisher who went bankrupt. We don't want other people to go bankrupt, but we want to keep these books. We don't want to destroy these books. We want to spread them around. So I'm going to be sending some of these books to you, Helen.
Thank you, Elaine.
Favorite people.
Everyone tonight has been my favourite people. It's been absolutely amazing. I will find good homes for seduction. And yes, anyone who lives in the UK who would like to get a copy of the book, please buy it from us, not from Amazon. You know how I feel about them. And Elaine has really kindly said she'll send us the beautiful pictures of the Seine and the book plates as well. So we'll turn that into a really lovely package to come through the post to you. You know who won that 4th piece of art. It was who guessed that 4th piece of art. It was Susan Schwartz. She's the real winner tonight. Send your children to Princeton. That seems to be the message we're all getting. And just to finish off, I'd just like to show you a picture of a version of Renoir that Dickon, our producer's dad, was involved in recreating in 1989 when they tried to they had to shoot the image as a photograph. Can you show us, Dickon? Yeah, so you can just see that on the screen there. So that was, I think, for a friend of Dickens' dad's birthday, they tried to recreate. So life on the Seine for all of us next year, Elaine. I'd like to say thank you so much for doing this salon with us, Elaine. It's been such a pleasure.
Well,
and
thank you. Next year in my living room, we'll be celebrating.
we'll have a salon in Paris. Thank you
Salon
so
in
much.
Paris sounds good. It's got a great ring.
Thank you so much for coming along, everyone. You really deserve one of these. I hope you enjoyed the trip along the Seine, and I very much hope we get to see you again. Cette salon est fermée. Au revoir.